knows every shadow like a lover's name. Her steps a rhythm, a deadly game. Fingers chase the edge of time. She rewrites the world, one line at a time.
Chapter 5. The Frankfurt Intercept. The cargo terminal at Frankfurt Airport operated on a rhythm invisible to civilian travelers, a nocturnal ballet of steel crates, automated conveyors, and barcoded destiny. Passenger terminals above pulsed with familiar rituals, queues, boarding calls, duty-free temptations. Down here, under the concrete skin of Europe's busiest hub, the choreography followed a different script. No announcements over cheerful speakers, no suitcase wheels on polished tiles, just the steady whine of electric tugs, the hiss of hydraulic lifts, the rumble of container loaders, and the curt commands of men and women in high-visibility vests. Ananya watched the choreography from an elevated observation catwalk, one level above the main freight floor. Sodium lamps cast a harsh, flat light over the cavernous space, turning containers into muted blocks of color and making every shadow feel deliberate. The air smelled of jet fuel, seeped in through massive hangar doors, industrial lubricant, rubber, and the faint trace of cold metal. She looked like she belonged there. The high-visibility vest sat over a navy blue work jacket, its reflective strips catching light whenever she moved. On her chest, clipped just above the zipper, hung a badge bearing the insignia of the European Union Customs Directorate. Beneath her name strip, Dr. Kavya Menon, Audit Division, a QR code linked to a profile buried deep in European bureaucratic systems, populated with carefully fabricated history. The forged documentation claimed she was a cybersecurity specialist conducting random compliance audits on diplomatic and high-value freight. The badge tasked cursory visual inspection easily. The digital backend, thanks to Volkov's architects, would survive even a moderately thorough database query. It wouldn't withstand a full forensic background dive by a dedicated counterintelligence team, but she only needed it to hold for under an hour. Beside her ear, invisible to anyone else, Volkov's voice hummed through the subvocal earpiece adhered just inside her right auditory canal. "Target container arrives in 7 minutes," the Russian said, tone as calm as if she were commenting on the weather. Bay 14C. Meridian Global Manifest lists it as pharmaceutical cold storage equipment, bound for Chennai port via transshipment in Dubai. Actually contains firmware distribution servers being deployed to compromise your port authority networks. Ananya scanned the moving machinery below with her eyes, tracing the pattern of forklifts, container mules, and articulated trucks. The number 14 bays formed a line along the left flank of the terminal, midway between a set of oversized cargo doors and a cluster of scanning tunnels. "Security presence?" she asked quietly, lips barely moving. "Rotating patrol," Volkov replied. 2 armed guards, 4-minute cycle. Automated oversight, cameras with motion analytics, badge readers on all controlled doors, and a facial recognition layer tied into European and Interpol watch lists. Your credentials will hold for approximately 40 minutes before secondary verification protocols query sources our people can't convincingly fake on this timeline. 40 minutes, Ananya murmured. Plenty of time. For you, perhaps, Volkov said. I have seen your psychological file. Your service calls you pathologically calm under duress. A faint smile ghosted across Ananya's lips. They meant it as a criticism, she said. Of course they did, Volkov replied. Bureaucracies dislike people they can't rattle. 82 seconds until your window to intercept the container without overlapping with the patrol enters its optimal phase. You should start moving. Ananya adjusted the inspection tablet, clipped to a harness at her hip. The device was legitimate, hardware issued by an EU regulatory body. Acquired and repurposed through circuits of influence that Moscow had spent decades cultivating. Its access codes had passed authentication checks earlier that morning when she'd run a test ping. As far as the terminal's systems were concerned, she was exactly who her badge claimed she was. She stepped away from the railing of the catwalk and headed down a narrow metal stairwell. The clanging of her boots on the grated steps was swallowed quickly by the ambient roar of the terminal. Her posture was just right, purposeful, slightly impatient, the gait of an inspector who knew both her authority and the fact that she was an unwelcome disruption to logistic schedules. At the bottom of the stairs, she flashed her badge at a waist-height turnstile. The reader beeped green. She pushed through and entered the main floor. The cargo bay stretched out before her like an indoor city. Steel containers rose in stacks, some wrapped in the livery of global shipping giants, others bearing the logos of smaller regional firms. Conveyor belts snaked between them, carrying parcels in neat rows through X-ray tunnels and weight check stations. Small vehicles zipped along marked lanes, towing carts of sorted freight to waiting pallets. Overhead, cameras tracked movement with dispassionate rotation. On the far wall, a bank of monitors displayed statistics in real time. Throughput per hour, departures on schedule, flagged anomalies. Her eyes tracked the security patrol. 2 guards in dark uniforms, sidearms holstered, neural disruptor carbines slung across their chests. They walked a regular loop, checking randomly chosen containers with handheld scanners, glancing toward the entrances. Their faces were bored, but their posture carried the easy readiness of people who had drilled enough to respond fast when needed. Patrol at 5 o'clock, 80 meters, moving away from 14C. Volkov's voice whispered in her ear. Camera Cluster 9 has overlapping coverage of your route. You're clear for 90 seconds if you stay in the blind wedge between forklift lanes B and D. Understood, Ananya murmured. She adjusted her path by a few degrees, as if simply navigating around a moving loader. Bay 14C gradually resolved out of the geometric maze, an open staging area with marked lines on the concrete to guide vehicle positioning. Color-coded signs above the bay displayed status: arrival inbound, inspection scheduled, cleared. The target container rolled into view on the back of a low-slung tug tractor, pulled from one of the nearby aircraft unloading zones. It was a standardized steel box, slightly shorter than some of the behemoths she'd seen outside, but still large enough to hold a small server room. The Meridian Global logo, a stylized globe wrapped in a lattice of digital lines, was printed on its side, crisp white on dark blue. Beneath it, a smaller line read, Secure Cold Chain Solutions. The phrase might even have been technically true in some cases, just not this one. Ananya's badge, properly exposed, triggered the automated inspection beacon above the bay. A yellow light began to pulse, and a line of text appeared on a small display. Random Compliance Audit Authorized. She walked up to the container with the unhurried authority of someone whose schedules trumped everyone else's. The dock worker, who had just disengaged the tractor from the container, looked up, rubbed his forehead, and sighed. Schon wieder? He muttered in German. Always inspections nowadays. Regulation never sleeps, Ananya replied in English, with a faint German lilt she had practiced on the way here. Her time in European training courses had given her enough accent mimicry to pass at a glance. She raised her inspection tablet, tapped in the container ID displayed on the manifest panel, and watched as the system confirmed her authorization. The electronic seal on the container's lock assembly lit green. Seal override approved. The tablet notified in a small pop-up display. She placed her hand on the lock and heard the satisfying click as the mechanism disengaged. For a moment, she simply stood there, the door still shut, listening to the hum of the terminal around her. 3 minutes before the patrol's next pass intersects your position, Volkov said. You're good, for now. Ananya pulled the heavy door open. Cool, dry air spilled out, air-conditioned, but not nearly as cold as true pharmaceutical cold chain requirements would dictate. She stepped inside. The interior was nothing like a cold storage unit. No refrigeration panels, no insulated racks. Instead, 2 rows of black metal server racks filled the container from front to back, their faces lined with blinking LEDs. Power distribution units ran along the sides, fed by thick cables terminating in standardized airport connectors. Each rack was densely populated with blades and solid-state arrays. The faint, constant whir of fans filled the confined space. A mechanical whisper layered beneath the deeper ambient noise of the terminal. These weren't just servers. They were mobile distribution hubs. Firmware distribution servers, Volkov had said, being deployed to compromise your port authority networks. In practice, these boxes would be installed in supposedly secure data centers, operated by partners of Meridian Global across India. Officially, they would handle route optimization, customs pre-clearance, and inventory reconciliation. Unofficially, they would push updates to edge devices and scanners connected to port networks. Seeding operation leverages payload deep into the hardware fabric. Ananya's eyes scanned the nearest rack, noting manufacturer labels. Some were commercial brands, others were custom builds with no obvious markings. She chose a mid-level unit with a port she recognized. From the inside pocket of her vest, she pulled out a compact device the size of a thick credit card. Black, no branding, a single recessed display. It was one of the tools Volkov had given her in Geneva. A hardware exploit module capable of attaching directly to a server's maintenance interface, extracting memory snapshots, and decrypting on-device key caches with specialized routines Moscow had been quietly developing for years. Where Western tools like Ghost Torch had focused on infiltration and control, these Russian modules were built for reconnaissance and sabotage. She knelt, plugged the device into the maintenance port of the chosen server, and pressed her thumb against the hidden biometric strip on its side. The tiny screen lit up, displaying a simple progress bar and a single word, capturing. The bar moved slowly, 23%, 31%, 41%. The ambient hum of the terminal continued outside. Inside the container, the air felt thick, the sound of her own breathing amplified by the enclosed metal walls. She kept one eye on the device, one ear tuned to the noise outside. Status? Volkov asked. Exploit initiated, Ananya replied. Memory dump in progress. Target appears to be central dispatch node. Lots of encrypted routing tables and patch manifests. Good. We'll need those manifests to map where they've already deployed, Volkov said. Security patrol approaching corridor between bays 12 and 13. If they deviate from pattern, they may wander within line of sight of 14C. You have 90 seconds before that becomes a meaningful risk. The progress bar ticked upward, 56%, 61, 70. Ananya's mind measured the gap between actions. She could abort now, pull the device, exit, and walk away like a standard inspector, her presence explained by the tablet log. Or she could stay, push for a complete capture, and risk turning a clean infiltration into a sprint. The choice was obvious. 20 seconds until the patrol reaches their junction decision point, Volkov said. They're moving slower. One of them stopped to talk to a supervisor. Then we bought a little time, Ananya said. I want the full snapshot. The device beeped once quietly. The progress bar hit 100% and flashed complete. A second screen appeared, listing hashes and packet sizes. Confirmation that a full extraction of active memory had been captured. Copy done, Ananya said. Pulling out. She disconnected the device and slid it back into her vest. As she rose to step out of the container, a sudden, jarring sound sliced through the ambient noise. An alarm. Not the soft ping of a misrouted container, or the irritating buzz of a forklift proximity warning. This was the piercing, industrial shriek of a terminal-level security alert. Red strobes flickered on the ceiling, bathing the container interior in intermittent crimson. Automated announcements blared in German, then English. Achtung, Achtung. Sicherheitsereignis im Frachtbereich. All personnel, cease operations and proceed to designated safety zones. Repeat, security incident in cargo terminal. Evacuate as directed. The voice echoed, bouncing off steel and concrete. The sound of machines began to stutter as systems paused, awaiting human input. Ananya cursed under her breath. Ananya. Volkov's voice snapped into her ear, losing its usual measured calm. They've accelerated their security sweep. Someone flagged your credentials, faster than projected, possibly a meta check at the EU level. You have incoming 6 security personnel closing on your position from 2 vectors. Estimated intercept in 90 seconds. Damn, Ananya said, stepping out of the container and pulling the door shut, letting it latch without resealing fully. So much for subtlety. What's your local environment? Volkov asked. I need your eyes. Ananya pivoted, taking in the space. Workers were already stepping back from their stations, some moving toward marked muster points. The security patrol she'd been tracking was now moving more quickly, accompanied by additional personnel in tactical gear. An overhead camera cluster had shifted its focus, lenses angling toward her side of the bay. "Open floor, containers to my left and right, forklift lanes behind me," she said. "Primary exit to my rear, now filling with people. Direct line of sight from guard team within 30 seconds, if they follow their alarm vector. Automated tracking has tagged your badge as one of the last active inspectors near the triggered zone," Volkov said. "They'll want to verify you physically. If they scan your ID again and pass it through secondary systems, your cover unravels." "Options?" Ananya asked, already angling her body toward an alternate corridor between container stacks. "Northwest corridor," Volkov said. "Freight elevator bank leading to tarmac service tunnels. 2 cameras covering the approach. I can send looped feeds to one, but not both, without tripping a systems integrity check. You'll have to stay outside the secondary lens arc." "Of course," Ananya murmured. "Wouldn't want it to be too easy." She began walking, not running, toward the indicated direction. A run would attract immediate attention. Her stride lengthened, her upper body staying relaxed, as if she were simply responding to the evacuation instructions with commendable efficiency. The first security guard came into view at the far end of the lane, a tall man in dark gray tactical gear, neural disruptor carbine raised in ready position. His eyes scanned the crowd, homing in on her high-visibility vest and the bright EU insignia. He pointed. "See, halt," he shouted. She pretended confusion for half a second, then raised her badge in a gesture of bureaucratic reflex. The motion brought her within 3 steps of a stack of containers to her left. "Switch to stack lane," Volkov said quietly. "Now." Ananya veered as if misinterpreting the guard's command, ducking behind the containers in a narrow lane barely wide enough for a pallet jack. For a few precious seconds, the metal walls blocked direct line of sight. "He's calling it in," Volkov said. "Reinforcements converging. They flagged your location on their internal map." "I'm honored," Ananya said under her breath. Ahead, the lane turned left, leading toward another open bay. She risked a glance around the edge. 2 more guards were advancing from that direction, weapons ready, attention scanning for unusual movement. Straight ahead was blocked. Behind her, the first guard's footsteps were closing, heavy and confident. Above, a camera swiveled, the faint motor whine barely audible. No time for a lengthy fight. No room for error. Her mind shifted into the cold clarity that training and experience had honed. A state where fear and doubt dropped away, replaced by vector analysis and probabilities. 13 meters to your right, Volkov said. Personnel access door to maintenance corridor. Badge reader plus keypad. I can spoof the reader for 3 seconds if you time it with a keypad input failure. 3 seconds, Ananya said. You spoil me. She reversed direction along the narrow lane, counting her steps. The door came into view. A gray metal slab with a small glass window at eye level. Badge reader mounted at chest height, keypad below. Beyond it, a fluorescent-lit corridor beckoned. She reached into her vest, fingers closing around a second forged ID card, this one labeled as tech support for a subcontractor. It carried a different profile, a different access path. On your mark, I send a false authentication success to the badge system, Volkov said. You'll need to convince the keypad to accept a neutral code at the same time. Ready? Ready, Ananya said. She heard the heavy steps of the first guard reach the mouth of the lane. His voice echoed off the metal walls, ordering her to stop in German. She ignored it. 3, 2, 1, mark, Volkov said. Ananya slapped the ID card against the reader while simultaneously punching a rapid sequence into the keypad. 0000, the universal placeholder of lazy systems. Under normal circumstances, it would trigger a denial and a log entry. But the badge reader light flashed green, not red. As Volkov injected a valid credential response at the exact moment of contact. The door lock clunked. She yanked it open, slipped through, and let it swing shut behind her. A second later, someone on the other side slammed into it. Manual override, a voice shouted. Fists hammered against the metal. Ananya was already moving down the maintenance corridor, a long, narrow passage lined with electrical conduits, diagnostic panels, and the occasional utility cart. The air here was warmer, more stagnant, smelling of dust and the faint tang of ozone. Freight elevator at the end, Volkov said, leads down to the service tunnels that run parallel to the tarmac taxiways. From there, you take the second branch to the right and follow it to Service Gate 7. How long until they reroute security units into the tunnel network? Ananya asked. They're still focused on the terminal floor, Volkov said. The system believes the intruder is you, as an inspector, possibly compromised but still on the upper level. Once they realize they've lost you, they'll expand the search. You have maybe 6 minutes to be out of their grid entirely. Generous, Ananya said. The freight elevator doors stood at the corridor's end. Wide, industrial grade, painted a dull gray. A call button sat beside them, its metal surface worn by countless hands. She pressed it. Nothing happened. Override? She asked. They've locked elevator use during the security event, Volkov said. Not unexpected. Stand by. The hall's overhead lights flickered once. The panel beside the elevator gave a soft beep. Then the floor indicator display blinked from a static 2 to a shifting pattern of lines. Then, with a reluctant groan, the doors slid open, revealing an empty car lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. I've convinced the system the elevator must remain operational for emergency equipment, Volkov said. Get in. Ananya stepped inside, hit the button for the sub-level service floor, and leaned back against the rear wall as the doors began to close. Halfway shut, a shadow appeared in the narrowing gap. A guard sprinting down the corridor, arm raised. He didn't fire, using neural disruptors in enclosed spaces near critical electrical infrastructure was discouraged for obvious reasons. But his shout echoed in the small cab as the door sealed. For a fraction of a second, she saw his eyes, not angry, just focused, doing his job. The elevator shuddered into motion, descending into the airport's hidden infrastructure. The adrenaline spike from the chase began to crest, then flatten. Years of training kicked in, directing her breathing, slowing her pulse. Her muscles stayed primed, but her mind remained clear. Ground level in 10 seconds, Volkov said. I've injected polymorphic noise into the terminal's tracking system, randomly generated phantom badge pings, fake motion signatures. Their monitors are going to look like they're haunted. It won't fool them forever, but it will delay correlation. How many systems are you juggling right now? Ananya asked. Enough that I will need very strong coffee later, Volkov replied, and perhaps a cigarette, even though my doctor will disapprove. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open to reveal a different world. The service level was lower, narrower, more cramped. Concrete walls lined the corridors, marked with yellow-black hazard stripes and directional arrows. Fuel, catering, maintenance. Overhead, exposed ducts and conduit ran in parallel lines. The air smelled of diesel, oil, and stale, recycled ventilation. This way, Volkov said. Follow the arrows for maintenance tunnel B3, second right, then straight for 200 meters. Service gate 7 is at the end. The van's waiting outside. Ananya stepped out, closing the elevator doors behind her with a firm push. Her footsteps echoed differently here, the sound more contained. A maintenance cart sat abandoned against one wall, laden with toolboxes and coiled hoses. Somewhere overhead, the muffled roar of jet engines broke the monotony. She moved quickly, but not so fast as to risk missing details. A wrong turn on this level could lead her toward high-security fuel bunkers or restricted avionics rooms, places where any unexpected presence would trigger fresh alerts. As she walked, a question that had been simmering since she'd attached the exploit device to the server surfaced. You said earlier that Meridian's client list included 18 Indian port authorities and a handful of banks, she said. What did we actually get from that server cluster just now? Her hand briefly touched the pocket where the small exploit device rested, heavier now with captured data. I'm parsing it, Volkov said. Memory captures always look like chaos at first, partial tables, encrypted segments, pointers to offline stores. But even from the initial hash analysis, I can see this. The manifests are not limited to India. She paused for a second, as if double-checking something. They've compromised supply chains across at least 15 countries, aligned loosely with the BRICS and Global South blocs, she continued. South Africa, Brazil, Indonesia, Mexico, Vietnam, Nigeria. Operation Leverage isn't a single country weapon. It's a strategic architecture aimed at dismantling alternative economic alliances quietly, one disruption at a time. Ananya absorbed that as she took the right turn into Tunnel B3. This corridor was longer, less cluttered, with occasional access doors leading to unseen rooms. A red emergency exit light glowed at the far end, next to a heavy door labeled Service Gate 7 in multiple languages. "So India isn't the target," she said. "We're the test environment." "You're the flagship case," Volkov replied. "The one large, visible economy balancing between Western pressure and Russian-Chinese alternatives. If they can break your confidence and force your government back into their preferred orbit, the message to the others is simple: resistance is costly and eventually futile." "And if they succeed once," Ananya said, "they can reuse the playbook, adjust variables, hit others." "Yes," Volkov said, "which is why this capture was critical. With these manifests, we can map the reach of their firmware distribution channels. We can identify which ports, banks, and pharmaceutical hubs are already seeded. And maybe," Ananya added, "we can feed that data back into the channels Saran is using, force him into decisions that reveal his hand." "That too," Volkov said, "assuming we move quickly enough." Ananya reached the service gate. It was a double-door assembly, thicker than standard, with reinforced hinges. A small window in the upper right corner revealed a slice of the outside world, a stretch of tarmac, a security fence, a glimpse of trees beyond. She swiped the EU inspector badge across the interior reader. It beeped once, not green this time, but amber, a delayed query. "Working on it," Volkov said. The pause stretched. Then the light turned green, and the mechanical lock clunked open. Ananya pushed the door outward, stepping into the chilly morning air. The outside service area was deliberately unremarkable. A concrete apron leading up to a tall chain-link fence, topped with spirals of razor wire, a security camera in a weatherproof housing perched above, and a rolling gate just wide enough to allow maintenance vehicles in and out. Beyond the fence, a narrow road wound alongside a strip of grass. In the distance, just visible through the morning haze, the tops of nearby buildings broke the skyline. A nondescript white panel van sat idling on the other side of the fence, its side emblazoned with the logo of a fictional catering firm. The driver's window was rolled down halfway. A person in a plain jacket and a baseball cap sat behind the wheel, face partially obscured. The gate motor whirred to life as her badge pinged the sensor. The barrier rolled aside. Ananya stepped across the threshold. The driver leaned slightly toward the window. The cap's brim cast a shadow over the face, but Ananya recognized the jawline, the angle of the cheekbones. "Get in," Volkov said, in person now rather than in her ear. "We don't have infinite minutes." Ananya climbed into the passenger seat, closing the door behind her. The upholstery smelled faintly of coffee and new plastic. The van was likely a recent acquisition. Volkov shifted gears with economical movements, guiding the vehicle away from the airport perimeter and onto the service road. As they merged into denser traffic near the main access highway, the disguised catering logo blended perfectly into the morning congestion of delivery trucks, taxis, and private cars. For a while, neither woman spoke. The city of Frankfurt unfolded ahead of them, clean lines of glass and steel, well-organized signage, patches of carefully maintained greenery. The contrast between the surface order and the subterranean chaos they'd just walked through felt sharp. Finally, Volkov broke the silence. "Your extraction was sloppier than I would like," she said, "but effective. Terminal security accelerated their checks faster than your models projected," Ananya said. "Someone upstream noticed an anomaly." "Yes," Volkov said. "We will need to assume that any future operations against Meridian infrastructure will encounter more active resistance. They may suspect their distribution channels are being watched now, even if they don't yet realize how much we pulled." "You said the data was worse than expected," Ananya said, turning slightly in her seat. "How much worse?" Volkov tapped the steering wheel once with a gloved finger. "The manifests show that Meridian's firmware updates have been pushed into at least 72 distinct network clusters across 15 nations," she said. "Not all are fully armed with leverage payloads. Some are still in dormant analysis mode, but the scaffolding is there." She glanced briefly at Ananya, then back at the road. "This isn't just about sanctions or a single energy corridor," she continued. It's about locking alternative trade routes and financial ecosystems into a permanent state of perceived instability. If every attempt to build a parallel architecture keeps mysteriously failing, people will default to the old systems. Fear is a powerful retention tool. And now we have a map, Ananya said, or at least pieces of one. Yes, Volkov said, enough to start a controlled burn. If we can disrupt enough of these nodes at the right times, we can force the architects of leverage to reveal themselves, either by scrambling to patch or by accelerating attacks to salvage what they can. And in the process, Ananya added, we might push Saran into moves that cross a line even Ra can't ignore. Volkov nodded once. Precisely. Traffic thickened briefly as they passed an on-ramp. A billboard advertised a financial services firm's global stability. The irony did not escape either of them. 11 days, Volkov said, her voice returning to its clipped operational cadence. That's the window before the scheduled crude shipment from Rosneft hits your western port. The timing of Phase 3 didn't happen by accident. If we can preempt or corrupt their attack at that moment, we don't just save a shipment. We shatter the perception of inevitability they've been cultivating. At least for a while, Ananya said. For a while is often all we get, Volkov replied. Long enough to reposition, to harden systems, to force adversaries into less elegant tools. Blunt weapons leave more traces. Ananya watched the city glide by through the windshield. Frankfurt's towers rose in the middle distance, glass reflecting a pale blue sky. On the surface, it was everything brochures promised. Efficient, modern, predictable. Underneath, the invisible currents of money, code, and power did not obey those promises. When we get back to base, Volkov said, we'll begin constructing twin campaigns, one external, targeting Meridian's distribution channels and Operation Leverage's control nodes, one internal, focused on your agency, specifically on creating a pattern of anomalies in Saran's oversight perimeter that only he can explain. 2 fronts, Ananya said, and both on tight clocks. Welcome to strategic triage, Volkov said dryly. You can handle it. I don't really have a choice, Ananya said. No, Volkov agreed. None of us do. The van joined a multi-lane road leading toward the city's business district, blending seamlessly into the anonymous flow. Above them, a commercial airliner clawed its way into the sky, engines thunderous. On its in-flight map, a simple arc would display between Frankfurt and some distant destination. Passengers would sip coffee, scroll through shows, and maybe glance out at the clouds without thinking about the invisible networks that made their journey seem so effortless. Somewhere along those networks, hidden inside hardware updates and cargo manifests, Operation Leverage pulsed quietly, waiting for its moment. Now, at least, it was no longer entirely unseen.
Her eyes burn cold, her touch ignites. She's the heartbeat in the day.